Yesterday, the lead negotiators in Congress on policing reform, Congresswoman Karen Bass, Senators Cory Booker and Tim Scott, released a joint statement saying, while we're still working through our differences on key issues, we continue to make progress toward a compromise and remain optimistic about the prospects of achieving that goal. For the latest on the state of those talks, let's now bring in the lead House negotiator, Congresswoman Karen Bass of California. Thanks, as always, for joining us, Congresswoman.
Certainly. Thanks for having me.
When I spoke with you last month, formal bipartisan talks were getting underway, and you said at the time that you were, quote, very hopeful that a bill would be on President Biden's desk by today. Of course, that didn't happen, but as you keep working toward a bipartisan bill, how close would you say that you actually are to getting this across the finish line in terms of days or months or weeks?
Well, I certainly do not believe it will be months. I am hopeful for weeks. But as Senator Scott said and Senator Booker in our joint statement yesterday, we do feel that things are moving forward. We just need to stick with it. And what was so more important to us, as much as I wanted it to see it finished by today, I am much more concerned about it being a substantive bill that will really begin to change things in our country.
And let's talk about the issue of qualified immunity for police officers, which, of course, protects them against lawsuits, which has been, it sounds like, a main sticking point. Just 2 weeks ago, you said, quote, it's our position that qualified immunity has to be eliminated. I know your main goal is to make sure officers can be held accountable. So is eliminating qualified immunity still on the table in these talks?
Yes, it is. And we are looking at how to hold officers accountable. That is the number one issue. So one is the public being able to hold an individual officer as well as a department accountable, as well as being able to prosecute officers that commit crimes, because that's one of the major stumbling blocks that causes so much pain and grief for communities and family members who've lost loved ones, that they have no recourse in our legal system. So you will see an officer on a videotape who has brutalized an individual, and several months later, you will see the local jurisdiction doesn't even file charges, does not pursue a prosecution. And that is because of the way the law is structured now. And that's one of the things that needs to change.
And I know, of course, you don't want to negotiate in public, but just want to go back to this idea that you do feel confident that Democrats and Republicans will be able to reach a deal that both sides will accept on this particular issue.
I do. I do believe that that's the case. And that's what we're looking at right now.
And I also want to ask you about a provision that you've talked about many times about wanting to address in this bill, and that's on decreasing the criminal intent standard for police-involved incidents. Is changing that standard something that Republicans are discussing as a part of a final deal, or is that off the table?
Well, again, I won't go into the details, but we are looking at how we hold officers accountable as well as transparency. And so, you know, getting information. We saw the tape from the gentleman that was killed in Louisiana, where the officer said he had been in a traffic accident. That was in 2019. So for the last 2 years, that family has had to grieve with the notion that was a lie, it was a cover-up, that their family member was killed in a traffic accident. 2 years later, we see the videotape and see that he was brutalized, he was beat to death. The officers in North Carolina, the judge, the DA that refused to release the tape to this day, they've only released portions. We have to have legislation that requires transparency. We want to upgrade policing in America where you would have officers accountable like people are in other professions.
And, of course, you were just referencing the family of Ronald Green. We had the chance to talk to his mom and sister a while ago. It seemed like they never were buying, actually, the story that the police were telling them. But just want to ask you this, as we reflect now, 1 year later, since the passing of George Floyd, what still frustrates you and what also gives you hope as far as any kind of progress that this country has made?
Well, I'm overall hopeful. There's no question about that, because I think so much has changed in the consciousness of people in the United States. I mean, prior to his murder, basically you would have the Black population overwhelmingly who understood that this has been a problem we've been grappling with for generations. And the majority population in the United States that's wanted to say, well, you know, it's an individual officer, it's an individual person. There's not a systemic problem. I think there is a widespread understanding that something is wrong in the United States in 2021 that on a daily basis, an average of 3 people lose their lives to police in this country. And I'm not saying that that means that in every case it was brutality, it was inappropriate, but in far too many cases, that is what is true. Over 100 people have died in officer-involved encounters since George Floyd's passing. And I reviewed 100 cases. And it's very interesting that the story is almost identical in each case. The person went for a gun. The person was a threat. I felt endangered. The person was unarmed. The person was having a mental health crisis. Is that really how we want the policing profession to conduct itself in 2021 in the United States? I think it's unacceptable.
Congresswoman Karen Bass, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.